can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Baby Einstein, Atari, many more, how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Today, we have a local Chicago. Jason VandeBoom is founder of ActiveCampaign, which is a web-based marketing platform that helps hundreds of thousands of small businesses improve and automate their marketing. Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Big shout out to Big Jason Henderson for introducing us. He absolutely loves ActiveCampaign, raves about it. I think every video I see of him, or when he talks about ActiveCampaign. When did you meet Jason? What does he love so much about it?
He just sort of appeared, a year or two ago.
He's like 6'10", so he doesn't sort of appear, but yeah.
He appeared, he really appeared. He just initially came out as a very big fan of the platform. I think a lot of it came from his experience with other platforms throughout the last 10 or so years of shortcomings either from the product side, the support side. Just found it to be a really refreshing change for the market.
What gaps, Jason, does Big Jason tell you, oh, this is what I was looking for from these other things?
Yeah, so I think it's this giant gap in the marketing automation space. So you have all your basic ESP providers like Aweber, MailChimp, Constant Contact, companies like that. And then if you want to get a little bit more advanced, you're typically having to make this giant jump over to like HubSpot, Marketo, Pardot. And in the middle, there's really not a whole lot of options. Mm-hmm. So you have things like Infusionsoft, which there's a lot of frustration about their platform. And we've kind of found this right fit for ourselves and the market of being the next step from these ESPs, taking things in a very user-friendly manner, where we really focus on the end user over the purchaser and really focus on the usability aspect of it, taking those automation features that you find in the enterprise solutions, making it so something a small business can use, and that really excites a lot of people.
So, Jason, who's the sweet spot? Who should be using ActiveCampaign?
Yeah, so it's really people that have already done some form of email marketing and have something in place. We do have people that start off right out of the gate and start with our platform. But if you have that basis of, you understand the concept of email marketing, sending out some sort of autoresponders or some sort of, delayed email, things like that, we can take all of that and really take it to the next level for you. And if you have that previous experience, we find that we can just show value very quickly.
Yeah. And right before we hit record, you were talking about, you started to mention a transition, but I wanted to save it for here.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah, we've been around since 2003, which sometimes surprises people or scares people, depending on how.
It surprises because it's been around so long and they hadn't heard of it, or what surprises?
So, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we started as a perpetual software. People would download it, install it on their own server. We had a very private label focused sale. So most of our sales came through resellers throughout the world that would rebrand the software as their own and then provide all the support, the install, everything like that to the end users. So we were very product.
You were behind the scenes. People were using you, but they didn't know what they were using you.
And we had really big brands using us even. Like we even had departments of Fortune 500s and whatnot using us. Nobody knew though. So we were just kind of this behind the scenes product team basically.
Yeah.
And during that time, we ended up creating 8 different products. All of them were contact focused. So we had more help desk, more survey, live chat, all these different products that were part of a contacts experience.
Yeah.
But by 2010 or so, it was, one, we were so split up in focuses for a small team. And that was one problem. And also, we were not happy with how we could not guarantee a good user experience. So people would download the product, they'd purchase it, then they would try to install it. Right then you have friction in the whole process. And someone has a problem installing it on their server, we help, we could try to help, but ultimately that server environment
They're all different.
Exactly. And that could have a limitation. Then the end user looks at it and then they see it as, we have a limitation. When, perhaps that's true to a certain extent, but we can only do so much to work around that. And then from a product standpoint, we were having to develop the product in a way where it would work all these different areas. We couldn't use things we wanted to use, third-party anything, services.
I'm surprised you have all your hair. This sounds really stressful.
So on top of that, every month, your revenue is completely different. So you're doing license, sales, and you try to get a reoccurring aspect with support contracts. It's really not reoccurring in the same style of, software as a service.
Yeah.
So it was we were doing well. We were growing. We were profitable, but it was definitely time for a change. So we initially introduced just a version of our email marketing product at the time as a hosted product. And really it was just kind of this thing off on the side. Like, you can buy the license. Otherwise, if you're one of these people that like software as a service, click on this little link, find that, and get in there. We found the demand to be honestly quite a bit more than we expected. And then we started making this transition. So of those 8 products, we sold or started to wind down all of them, and really tried making this long, awfully hard transition over to SaaS.
So when did you transition to SaaS for the email marketing?
Yeah, so we started very slowly in 2010.
Okay.
And then really by, I'd say it's like 2012, 2013 is when it was at the forefront and the main focus.
Yeah.
Much longer than I would have liked or anticipated. But at the same time, we've always been bootstrapped. And we were switching from a model of where people would give us $500,000 to $50,000 a license, and switching that over to, let's just...
That's hard to... Is that painful to give up? Like someone's offering you $500,000, you're like, we're going to go to the SaaS business where people are paying a small monthly fee.
Yeah, like even if you take the small price point of $500, to even replace $500 with $9 or $29, one, we're making less money even in a year.
Yeah.
Two, we make far less money up front, so we have to wait for that compounding nature of recurring revenue to kind of build up. And that's why we took so long, is because we wanted to maintain both growth in revenue and profit during the transition, while still, getting switched over. It was a tricky process.
Yeah, and Jason, I want to go back to the beginning at some point about the idea, but there are 2 things I want to note before we go there. I was watching some videos of Big Jason, and I didn't realize there's misconceptions with ActiveCampaign, with affiliates and other things. What are some of those misconceptions that people are talking about that need to be dispelled?
Sure. I think it's a little bit of a less of an issue now.
Okay.
Partially, and thanks to him for trying to kind of get out there and try to calm down people that are just saying.
Why were people up in arms? What were they saying?
It's so affiliate marketing. You have different types of people that do affiliate marketing. You have wonderful affiliate marketers, and then you have lower value affiliate marketers. Just like any other industry, just like any other vertical.
Sure.
No different. In our terms of service, we've always said that affiliate marketing is something we don't allow in the case of affiliate marketing where you just send out dedicated email ads to the same list with providing no value on top.
I see.
So
someone's just doing like solo ad after solo ad type of thing.
Take like a link of product A, shoot it to your list, a product B, shoot it to your list, and you do that like 5 or 10 times a day to 100,000 people every day. All these seemingly unrelated products half the time.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. There's no value add. Some people took that as, we don't like affiliate marketing. Even though we have some big name, we have plenty of people doing affiliate marketing with our platform. Some people took it as, we just have a hard stance against it. We've cleared that up a little bit by just providing a little bit more help documentation about what is not okay, things like that. And then also our compliance team is just amazing in the way, when there is an issue, we reach out, we talk to someone, we try to work things out. We never just close off an account. Right. And unfortunately, there were some people out there that quite honestly never even had an account with us that were going around saying that we just close out an account if they do affiliate marketing, which has never been the case. So there's just a lot of misinformation going around in certain circles.
Yeah. I mean, you have to protect all the people under who use you too.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
When
And
you
that's
do those
why,
things.
and affiliate marketing is just one category of items. Affiliate marketing is fine. The solo ad, like email sending of a single advertisement nonstop to your list with no value add, that's something we actually don't allow in general. And it doesn't affect just affiliate marketers. We often find that with some expos, things like that just shoot out ads to the entire list all the time.
Yeah.
And there's really no value add. It's just an ad that's going on. And we don't want to be part of that.
Yeah. So what else, Jason, have you as a founder and company had to put your foot down on?
On like different topics in regards to...
Yeah, like maybe stipulation, like we're not going to allow people, like you said, to send out these solo mails every single day. What else have you had to put your foot down because of people are abusing it?
Yeah, it's certain types of content and whatnot, I'd say. A lot of it's behind the scenes, not necessarily something that's visible. It's interesting the number of ways people try to exploit an email platform. From every single feature you could possibly have, someone is trying to exploit it.
Yeah, what do you mean by content? Tell me, what are people trying to get away with?
So some people will send something out. They'll have content in there that's an image or something like that.
Yeah.
That image will be hosted somewhere that they control, and then based on the IP address that is actually opening that image, they'll change it up. So sometimes it will be something that they want us to see, and sometimes it'll be something that they want to send. Same thing when they click, and we've actually found people that do that and try to determine all of our locations for our compliance team and adjust things accordingly. Luckily, we have a system in place that we do hundreds of checks. We're constantly analyzing messages in different ways from different places, things like that, so we catch this. Yeah. But it's people spend a lot of time.
That sounds pretty intricate.
Yeah, just to try to utilize the reputation and value that our email sending has.
So is this like the porn industry? Like, what are we talking about? Oh, it's not the porn. What is it? What kind of images?
Just it's hard to say without going to like. It's not even anything like terribly bad.
Really?
It's just.
So what are they trying to get away with then? If it's not that bad?
Because we wouldn't send it because what it looks like, how they set it up is it looks like a nice purely opted in value-adding email. What it actually ends up being is something that someone probably didn't opt in.
It's more like a spammy email because they didn't opt in for that type of information.
Yeah,
and they know you're strict with your policy, and then
or they're trying to just get past any of our things because we don't allow adult, we don't allow most gambling, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So
clever.
Seriously, that is a lot of time. They could probably build their own like AWeber ActiveCampaign for that amount of.
See that's they could do that, but the reputation that our sending has isn't easy to replicate, and that's not something they'd be able to do unless they actually start a legitimate business.
Right. Integration relationships I want to talk about. I often see in forums and other places, ActiveCampaign always gets mentioned with this, like, I have ActiveCampaign and Samcart, or I have ActiveCampaign and Lead Pages. So talk about, do you actively work with those partners, or is that just like a natural thing that people couple ActiveCampaign with another company?
Sure. So I think it's a couple things. So one, we do have a big partner focus. Always have. It's become a lot easier over time as we have this much larger community of users that are passionate. Mm-hmm. So when they go into platform, they're like, why don't you have ActiveCampaign? They make the case for us now in terms of the value add for that company to integrate with us. And then also it's we've always had an approach where we want to be that automation platform where we're a centralized platform in the way we have data coming in through all points of a contact's experience, but we don't want to be the bloated all-in-one that some other platforms have chosen to try to take on. Because then what you end up with is junk e-commerce, junk everything, because that's not your main focus. We want to focus on the messaging, automation, and the sales aspects
Yeah.
If we include a shopping cart or e-commerce system, it's not going to be as good as a lot of the
Right.
other options out there. Now, if we have native and very seamless integrations where we can move data back and forth, and ActiveCampaign can be more of the data hub and engine of things,
Yeah.
that does add a tremendous amount of value, and then everyone gets the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I mean, and it is time and energy for your team to do these integrations. You have to choose them
Yeah.
wisely. And especially,
Yes.
I mean, now you're growing a lot. When you're 5 people or 12 people, you have limited resources.
Yeah.
So talk about what are some of the ones you decided to go with and why, just so people hear your thought process.
Sure, it's pretty simple usually. It's based on what we see in the market, and then also based on what we see with our customer base. So we're working on some things right now where we're having some very native and interesting integrations with e-commerce platforms, and the decision from that was pretty simple from the get-go on what to start with.
Yeah.
Just because we have people talking to our partners, people talking to our customers, feedback forums in place. It's pretty easy to get that data. I like to keep things as more of a data-driven decision
Yeah.
versus like, I think this platform could be cool. Let's
Yeah.
integrate with that.
So is it a number of requests? Like we need to have 12.7 requests before we integrate, or what's the data look like that you can pull
I
the
guess
trigger?
it's like, so kind of going back to the e-commerce thing, it's not even like nobody said like we want a native e-commerce integration. They're not like overly specific, but
Right.
we see the
No one
need.
talks like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the need of getting data in a way where it's more multi-level data and making groups of data actionable, especially when it comes to e-commerce and other categories. So based on that, then we can kind of analyze our feedback, analyze our community, things like that, and what people are talking about with platforms in that, and then we can just get a sampling of what are the top ones. Does that match up with what we think the industry kind of is saying as well, and then take that and just take 3 or 4 to start, and then from there we can see if demand changes.
What are some of the most popular integrations that you have with other companies?
So right now it's there's quite a few. Zapier remains a pretty big favorite, obviously, because that can fill in any hole of a native integration.
Right.
We see e-commerce platforms like BigCommerce, Shopify, WooCommerce being pretty solid, and those are ones we want to make a little bit better and more native. But yeah, it's Google Contacts, things like that.
How hard is it to do that integration with Shopify
So
for your
it's
team?
very dependent on the platform. So Shopify, not that bad. BigCommerce, not that bad. Some e-commerce platforms, I won't name names, but like they're just it would be a nightmare. We're not going to touch it. They have a lot of users, but if they don't have the proper things in place,
It's like the infrastructure is not there, or why?
the development options. So it's either like they're lacking certain types of API calls, they're lacking webhooks, because we want everything in real time as much as possible as well. We don't want to be doing polling and things like that.
Right.
So that's another part of the decision on who to integrate with.
About what you're saying is you want to stay tight. You don't want to make it bulky and try and do everything for everyone, and that can get tempting, right? I mean, early on you have 8 products.
Well,
so,
yeah. And
so
especially
now,
like,
what's that?
Someone says like, I'll give you $200,000 for a contract, but I need feature X, and feature X isn't part of our direction. It's not part of what we want to do. Yeah, it's
That's what I want to ask is what's been tempting for you that you just still stayed the course and stayed disciplined despite being tempted with this? Well, we could.
Yeah, so it's not any like main one thing I'd say, but it's all these little requests. So like whenever we do a feature, people are like, this is great, but it'd be nice to have this option, this option, this option, this option.
People wanted to customize everything.
And and back in the day, we kind of ran with that. We're like, okay, let's add in options. We're development focused. We're let's just add in more options because options are good, right? Features are good. What we've learned over time is we're not selling based on features. We're selling based on experience and results.
Right.
So limiting that, it might not be ideal, like the perfect scenario for every single user, but overall it'll be better. And that's we constantly kind of encounter that with every single update we do.
Yeah, so I want to go back, Jason, for a second, because I couldn't find anywhere on the net of the inception and story early on. of ActiveCampaign. But
Sure.
first off, where did you grow up, and what was an influence for you early on?
So I grew up in a little town in Wisconsin, a couple thousand people. Not a whole lot going on there.
Yeah, so what was life like then? What were you doing for fun?
It was nice. It was, it was, you couldn't really go anywhere because I lived in the country. So, but yeah, it's just spending a lot of time tinkering with things.
Were you into computers when you were young?
So I got luckily my parents purchased a nice Packard Bell for me back in the day. And it was a beautiful, beautiful machine. And I just started playing around with whatever I could on that. Shortly after, I wanted to learn, like, how can I get into building something, whether it's just like an awful program where I can just input something and it does something for me. While at the same time, I've always had this kind of like blend, a passion for both art and tech, which typically.
Why were your parents into art, or why?
Yeah,
why
so yeah, my mom was an artist, and so I naturally started thinking like, okay, like, typical, like, if I like tech, I like design, I'll start doing some web design or something like that. So I was able to get some people to give me projects for that. I had to kind of fake my way through that to a certain extent because nobody wanted to hire like a 12 or 14-year-old,
I mean, you still look super young, so like I can't imagine what you look like then.
So yeah, it's so some people, so I did some fun projects for that, and then once I got into high school, I went into a program where I only went to high school for half the day.
Oh, really?
I started working at an ISP for half the day.
How did that work? Like, anyone could do that, or how did you get that?
So you have to like want to do it, but you have to find like a credible job to work at. So
was this offered? How did you even find out about this? Like, was this offered at your high school?
It was offered. I don't know of anyone else that actually did it.
So you're like, I'm going to go to high school half day, which is pretty smart. So yeah.
Yeah. So I started doing that. Started working on an ISP. That allowed me to get a little bit more into, as I started off doing more like, tech support, troubleshooting, a little bit of networking, some web design there, some basic programming, things like that. But that got me kind of into a little bit more of a formalized way of doing things, a little bit more exposure to things I wouldn't have been exposed to.
So is that a random thing that there's an ISP company in a small town in Wisconsin? I mean,
it is. So this is back, this is also back in the day where, people were still paying for dial-up connections. So, we had, it was a nice company, very small, but it was a nice company. But yeah, and there was just rooms of all the dial-up connection equipment and things like that. It's probably
so what'd you learn there from working? This is like old school dial-up tech company. I mean,
yeah, honestly, what I learned the most there was how to deal with people, because I had such so much work dealing with people that had problems, varying educations in terms of technology. So, and then also dealing with a lot of business customers. So just kind of learning like what their challenges are, what they're trying to do, things like that. Because it wasn't just the dial-up access and whatnot. Some people are doing web hosting with us. So I got a good blend of both like consumer and business experience.
So what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were junior high school?
Yeah, so I remember I always said I just wanted to run a design company of like 5 or 10 people, and that was my goal.
Design company?
Yeah, technically,
like a web design, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So, but that's all I wanted to, because I liked that. I like the art and I like the technical. So at that point in life, that's made sense. So yeah, and then after high school, I decided I kind of wanted to be exposed to something other than where I was. It's a nice town and everything, but I wanted to try, a bigger city, get to meet different people, things like that. So moved to Chicago, went to art school.
I didn't know that. So where did you go?
The Illinois Institute of Art.
Okay.
So I was there for a while.
So what do you study? What did you do at the Illinois Institute? I totally did not expect this at all.
So not technical at all, really. I think the study focus was interactive design or something like that at the time. They've changed the name several times, but essentially you're just getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So, I went there for a while. I managed to test my way out of quite a few of the classes, luckily. The only class that I couldn't get tested out of, because I don't think the person liked me for trying to test out of it, was Introduction to Internet. And
Are you serious? You couldn't test out Introduction to Internet?
All these other classes, but not that one. Was frustrating. But yeah, I think there was a little bit of a personal grudge against me there.
So I picture you in a room like doing sculptures. Like what were you actually doing in your education?
So some fine art, like drawing, things like that. It jumped right into more illustration and some graphic design, some like that. This is a little while ago, so like Flash was still like kind of a thing and stuff like that. So yeah, just a broad range of items. So when I started school, I started the company, I think 2 months in, something like that. So it quickly started taking off enough to where...
You started the company 2 months into when?
After starting college.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, so it quickly started taking up more and more time. So I was trying to balance those things. I switched to an online / there for a while, trying to free up some time. I had a bunch of classes where they just really didn't care if I actually showed up, because it's a lot of art and project-based work.
Right.
So you're, as long as the end product is nice, it's beautiful, then all is well. And then ultimately it just got to a point where, it's like it makes no logical sense anymore. This is just like, why am I doing this?
Just because you're spending all your time at the company.
And I started getting it to where I was part-time and then part-time online. And then I started thinking, why? This doesn't make any sense now. The material I'm working on just doesn't really relate. And even if it did relate, I'm working at something already at a larger scale. So then I think I had a semester left or something. But I decided to just...
So what was the initial idea for the company?
So initially, I was dealing with a lot of freelance, a lot of contract work for websites. They always had a similar thing back in the day of wanting to do something with their contacts, wanting to manage different forms of their marketing. So I kept building out mini versions of an email marketing product for newsletters and mini versions of content management and things like that.
Yeah.
So I thought okay, why don't I just develop one and I'll just, have it used by all these clients,
right.
And saves me some time. It can be a better experience for them. So that's kind of what I ran with. And then I just sort of threw it out there as, let's see what happens if anyone buys it on some sites. And within a couple of days, I started getting orders, and it was like, okay, well, that might be a better angle to go with than more of a service-based approach of the consulting that I was doing.
Jason, who was the most memorable customer, really early on?
So we had some interesting ones. There was a scuba diving place, I believe, that just came out of nowhere from another country.
How were people finding you?
So I was posting on back in the day it was hot scripts, things like that, where you had downloadable PHP scripts and whatnot. So I think they're just finding me from there. But what was interesting is these tiny whether it's a coffee shop or a scuba diving place or something else, these tiny little companies, which are wonderful companies, but in all these different countries buying it instead of anyone close to me at all, which makes sense, but it was eye-opening to me at the time.
You were getting these customers from all over the world.
Yeah, and to date, we're only 45-48% US based. So
really?
We have a really big reach, and part of that is because we've always taken development with the idea of localization in mind, but with languages and support for languages. So it makes it so that it's a better solution for people in different countries.
Was it called ActiveCampaign? What was the original name?
So it was called ActiveCampaign.
Wow.
But we had these 8 different products, and they were called different things at different times. We typically called the email marketing one ActiveCampaign email marketing. Then we had ActiveCampaign help desk, things like that. Luckily, I chose a name that still kind of works for what we do. So when we consolidated down, we thought it just makes sense. We'll just keep it at ActiveCampaign.
So what else were you doing to get business when you when you realized, okay, I'm just going to do this one script or whatever it is and not trying to reproduce?
Yeah. So I tried posting on places, things like that. That's what started getting some orders. I then tried to do pretty much everything under the sun to try to capitalize on that a little bit more, try to get more sales. It all failed. It all fell right on its face. It all was waste of money. And the reason being is it was a hard sale to make because someone couldn't just sign up. They had to have hosting. They had to know how to download the software, install it on their server. They had to know how to create a database in MySQL. Like, it was a challenging setup.
You need a technical customer.
Yeah, and for a product I was selling at the time for like $85 or something like that. That's a lot of needs for that price point. And at the time there weren't a lot of like SaaS solutions for email marketing. And from the product side, you had like Lyris, which was out there, which was the big name at the time. So I was competing with someone that had a lot more ad spend, a lot more resources, everything for a downloadable product.
What was the progression of the product? Like those 8 products early on.
Yeah.
What was like the first one, and then what did you build after that?
So after the email marketing, we developed a help desk product that had actually pretty decent success. And then we moved into...
This was after like a customer requested this? Or?
Oh, it's honestly, it's more like what we needed. So what we needed and where we couldn't find something.
I see. You
as a
build
product company, we're like, okay, let's build it. And then we don't have to pay for it. And then we have potentially a product that can, grow and live on over time. And that's why everything was so contact centered. So we had the help desk, we had the survey software, we had live chat, which was basically an addition to the help desk. We had all these, it was interesting. It was good from a product standpoint and an experience standpoint. From a lack of focus, it wasn't as good.
So you went from email to help desk to survey to live chat. What else? What was next?
Yeah,
and how many people at this point? Is it just you coding this up, or how did you do all this?
So once we get through a number of those products, it's maybe 5 people at that point.
I mean, it would seem like a daunting task for one person for all this stuff.
Yeah.
So what point did you bring someone else on?
Within the first year.
First year.
It took a while. I
don't think that's that long, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to try to take on yourself. But when we launched the help desk product, I think it was a couple people.
How did you find those people?
Just people I knew. So
people you knew.
Early on, it was just people I knew, and then a little bit further along, we had a little bit more traction. Kind of knew what we were trying to do a little bit better. Had some metrics in place. Then we could make some decisions on hiring, and then we went out and found some people that kind of fit those roles.
So email, help desk, survey, live chat. Then what else?
Yeah, so I have to try to remember all these.
You're like, I'm trying to forget.
Yes. So we had a knowledge management product, which sounds very vague, but it was essentially,
It's called Google. What you like made the early form of Google?
So and actually we had some the knowledge management product was interesting in the way we had the largest companies using it that we've ever had in any of the products, from within film, within the high-tech sector, within all over the place. And the idea was just managing content of, think like Atlassian, Confluence, or like any sort of knowledge platform.
So it's internal?
Yeah,
it internal?
primarily internal, can be public, but also mostly internal. Now, it was very early on, so it's not at all to the level of what like Confluence or anything else is today. But at the time, there was a lack of options for that.
What do people use it for? Like that film company?
Internal. Mostly employee information, things like that. So like guides for employees, processes, things like that.
So it makes it searchable. Like what was I guess attractive to them?
It's not rocket science at all. It's just having the data in a very collected manner where people can easily digest and search through it.
Yeah.
And having it so that you can have any number of users with different permissions go in, make changes, and approve changes to articles. You talk about it today, it sounds like the dumbest thing in the world. Back then, there was a need for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So what else? So you have email, help desk, survey, live chat, knowledge management. What else did you create?
So we had a content management platform for a while, which was slightly different than the knowledge management platform. We had a time tracking application. This is something that didn't really take off.
So content management, though, are we talking like a WordPress type of like management system, or what did that look like?
More like site. So think like some simplified, basically taking a very simplified version of what some of the site-based options out there would be. Like nowadays, most people would opt for like WordPress or something like that to hand it off to a user. But it was just something so that a design company could manage multiple sites from a single location, set up users to be able to go in and edit parts of the site without messing up anything.
Mm-hmm. And you said a time tracker? What else?
Yeah. That was one thing. We can skip past that one though. So yeah, and it was just like past this, it's just like little things that are not wonderful.
So what were the top ones that got the most traction?
Definitely email, help desk, and survey, without doubt. The survey product, we started doing a SaaS version of it as well, and we saw some traction with that as well. But it just, we made the decision
took your focus. Even
though help desk and survey, they were making a good amount of revenue, they were progressing along nicely, took the focus away. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. So in the evolution of the company, what are some of the big challenges throughout?
Yeah, so that changeover from perpetual to SaaS, I'd say, is by far the biggest, both as a company, as a product, as understanding. We were going from product focused, all of a sudden having a much bigger need for support, customer success, the idea of having sales in the company, something we've never done before up until about 6 months ago. We've never had a sales team, never had anyone focused.
How did you do that before? What did you do? What was your process before?
It was all self-serve. So support basically took on any sales requests as a function of the support team, which they did a wonderful job at. But when you're in support and you're dealing with a lot of reactionary items, someone comes in with a question. They might be from a big potential account. They're going to ask about one thing. We answer the question. All is well, but if we take it from a little bit more of a sales approach and we understand, like, hey, this is an opportunity worth X dollars, we'll answer your question, but like, let's get the conversation started in terms of like, what are you looking for, where are you at with it, and things like that.
So what's the biggest challenge with transitioning to SaaS?
It's honestly, it's handling your existing business with care, because we've always tried to do the right thing for all the users that are with us. So we didn't want to, even if we had the funds, even if we thought like a cold switch over would be fine, that's not something we would believe in. So we have all these users that have used the perpetual version. We want to take the time to let them try out the SaaS version, understand, and we can make a very solid argument on why switching over to it makes sense.
They're using a licensed version, and you want to encourage them, hey,
Yeah.
we're building out this SaaS version.
And there's
You
trade-offs.
should get on it.
Initially, it can be less for them. They have less control in the sense of it's not on their own server. But when they factor in the time spent, and if they value their time and whatnot, a clear argument can start being made for that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that seems like a benefit, not a disadvantage. Like, I don't want to manage it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes people would think that they're actually saving money with that version.
I see.
So making the argument of, maybe if you look at it, comparing it side by side, maybe over time you would be. But if, in regards to time that you spend on it and the value add that we're providing on top of things, it starts to become a clear decision.
Yeah. So what are other challenges? So transitioning to SaaS and getting the customers, more aware that, okay, we want to get everyone on the SaaS. What else is a challenge?
So, as we transition to SaaS, I wasn't happy with being an email marketing provider. I didn't want to be an email marketing provider. Seems like an awful business to be in. There's still a lot of room in the market and whatnot, but it's essentially a commodity now. Everyone is just competing on price and variances of features and how they work. So I always liked the idea of sending fewer emails more intelligently than trying to just send mass amounts of communication. So marketing automation was kind of a clear fit for us to try to drive towards. And making that change was also a little bit difficult because while we had a lot of adopters that thought it was like amazing and that were really happy, we also had people that thought we were becoming distracted, we were switching focuses, we were getting away from what they care about. If they're just using us for a newsletter, they don't really care about any of this. So why are we doing that instead of doing something regarding newsletters?
So what made you decide to start doing that?
It's really to differentiate. And I think you'll see on the market now that everyone has kind of followed suit. You see all the more basic email marketing providers like MailChimp, Campaign Monitor, and whatnot all have automation tabs now. They're essentially currently still kind of like glorified autoresponders in the sense you send an email, you wait some time, send an email, wait some time, with maybe some things in between. So it's not really marketing automation. But I think you see that shift in the market where everyone is trying to differentiate. Because as it becomes more and more of a commodity, you have to do something or your prices will be just driving down.
Yeah. So Jason, what do you find some of the most important marketing automation that you have to give people an example?
It's really just the progression of a contact. And so like when a contact first, you realize a contact, whether that's from a form, they're visiting your site, they sign up for something, to have those touch points of email. But then also a key part in our platform, and I think in customer experience in general, is to extract when a human touch point is necessary, because that adds considerable more value than trying to over-automate things. So that might mean use our contact scoring, use our site tracking, use all of our features to kind of determine the behaviors of someone.
Right.
And then you have automated, messages or follow-ups and things like that. But then it goes into a pipeline, it alerts people, it sets tasks for something to happen, so that you get the human.
So give an example of one of the companies that's using it successfully, just so I can visualize. Okay, this person like Joe, opens an email 3 times, reads it, and then someone from their team gets alerted and says, "You need to call this person."
I'll use us as an example, just so I don't have to.
Yeah.
So when
you eat your own dog food, so talk about yourself
very heavily, and I'll try to give like a high level because we have quite a few automations in place. And
yeah. I'd love to hear I'd love to hear what automations you have in place, and
So from more of the sales side of things, we're constantly tracking everything anyone's doing inside the platform, where they're stopping with progression. So basically trying to create a funnel of when someone first knows about us from our sales site and then gets into the platform, where they fall off. And then based on that, we have some automations that start up when they create a trial, obviously. And then we'll send some emails based on engagement with that. They may go into automated follow-up sequences, or they may go into a sales pipeline. And then depending on perceived value of the account, which we're able to try to determine just based on their actions and based on what they're looking at and things like that, it'll go to different parts of the sales team. And then we'll follow different sales processes for that. Once you get into those sales team and those sales pipelines, those have automations that help assist the sales team. So even though you're going into a sales pipeline, we have automations to either send some follow-ups or kind of move them along in stages or help with the task follow-up. So if we know that if someone of a certain value comes in, they logged in, they created a campaign, they didn't do anything else, we have someone reach out, we can have automated follow-ups based on, do they do another action even though they didn't reply to that sales rep? Or if they reply to that sales rep, maybe we kind of exclude them from certain things, move them along in the pipeline for that rep. So the rep ends up not spending as much time, and we save a lot of time there. But it's just intelligently knowing when is the human touch versus the automated.
Right. So what actions do they have to take to enter the sales pipeline? Like, what's an example of something they would do? Like, oh, they're no longer in this marketing automation pipeline, and they have now entered the sales pipeline.
Yeah, so it's once we determine where they're at in the stage of their and the value, I guess I'd say. And that can be based on information they give us willingly in a form.
Yeah.
But that could also be in, so let's say you go in, you create a trial, you create an automation. Okay, so you general interest in the platform, a little bit interested, maybe not enough information yet. But then you go in and you do something with the CRM in relation to automations. Just
this is a current customer, right?
No, just a trial.
A trial, okay.
And this can be applied both to our sales site and to the product. So maybe even you're just looking at the sales side and you're looking through the automation features, and then we see you browsing through the CRM features. Instantly, we know your minimum price point has gone up if you have interest in the CRM, which is part of our mid-tier. So then based on that, then we can start building an idea of what we think your potential account size would be. And then we can take in external factors of like what we think, what company you're from, size of the company, things like that,
right.
and use all of that to try to like build a profile about you. And then we'll look at it and talk to you.
I love this. I love this intelligence. So on the site, like a new person going on, what ideally do you know when they click on this tab, they are like the highest value, best customer? Like I'm looking at your site, and obviously you pay very close attention to design because you love that. So I suggest anyone for that fact, I can go to ActiveCampaign.com, and like you have the direct call to action, at the top, and everything's laid out, I'm sure, because for many detailed reasons. So what does that look like? Okay, this person clicks pricing, then enterprise, then contact. This person is like our best customer.
Yeah, and it's it kind of along what you're saying of getting into enterprise funnel from a value standpoint. Then we have a pretty good understanding. But I think the biggest thing is trying to differentiate whether they're looking for a basic ESP versus more what we're trying to target now. And trying to determine that is kind of just excluding, like if they're focusing on pages that have to do with email marketing, but then they don't spend a lot of time on any of the other pages like automation, CRM, things like that. One, we might, just because we have all of that in the platform, we have all the automation, even with the basic plans, it might be a lot for them to consume if they don't like it and they're not interested in it. And then they might not be as ideal of a customer then. Right. Whereas if we see once you start getting into automation, you watch the little video, you go down, you get into some other pages based on that, you look at things like site and event tracking, then we know like we have your attention probably at this point, because these are items that you just simply cannot find in our price point within this market.
Yeah, it'd be funny if like someone has a series of steps, like they click pricing and they click something to do with email, then just a big red X shows up, like this is not for you. We are not. We are not your. What? So I mean, you're trying to attract people who are more sophisticated with marketing automation, not just for a simple email service provider.
And so just 2 or 3 years ago, pretty much everyone was just email marketing. Now I'd say about 85% of our users utilize marketing automation in addition. So yeah, it's definitely where our strong suit is.
So back to, Jason, when I was saying the integration, like what's the most popular user is Zapier, but what's something people like businesses you find, okay, I find a lot online. It says you need to get ActiveCampaign and SamCart or ActiveCampaign and something. What are the most popular besides Zapier, but like for running their business, like automation?
It's a lot of just contact entry points. So, that could be lead pages, drive themes, ClickFunnels, things like that. I think that's probably, in terms of volume, the largest. I would say it's just with how many integrations there are now and how many integrations that are being created that we don't always know of before our customers know of them sometimes because the companies don't even tell us, and all of a sudden there's an integration live. It's just so spread out, but it's any contact entry point. And that's why e-commerce makes sense. That's why events make sense.
Tell me a story of a company using the marketing automation that, even though you created it, kind of blew your mind on how they were sophisticated. How sophisticated they were in using it.
Well, I'd say from two standpoints. One, some people just building out things that we never imagined. And
like what? What does that look like?
It looks like something where you have to zoom out for like days and then try to understand the logic of this. And there is logic behind it, and they map it out and things like that. But just the complexity that it can just create, and utilizing it for something that we didn't necessarily think it would be used for.
Yeah. Like what? What would that be?
Even like, taking customer success as an example.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. It wasn't our intention, but it makes sense. But people are utilizing automation and our sales features as a customer success platform. And it's not even just like sending out messages to people or anything. It's taking a lot of the ideas from sales and translating it into more of a support customer success style of touch points with accounts and things like that. And we've done that ourselves now. But it's just, it's just taking things and we design it a certain way, and with how many users we have, they create all sorts of fun things.
So on the challenge side of things and the good side of things, you said, for a long time you went from 5 to 12, and we were talking, you're going to go to 40 people.
Yeah.
So what accounts for the huge?
Now
40 people now.
Yeah. This year we're expected to more than double that pretty conservatively. So it's an interesting standpoint because a lot of the people, pretty much everyone that was at that 12 point and even at like that 8 people point, they're still with the company now.
Right.
So it's been interesting because we've had to change a lot of things from product support, everything.
So from 12 to 40.
Yeah.
What was the huge growth spurt from that?
It's really getting into finding our fit more in this marketing automation space. So it's just caused this big influx of organic customers coming our way. We're pulling from email marketing providers, and we're also pulling from upmarket, from more established players in the automation space. And that's just grew everything, revenue, profits all around, allowing us to grow.
So what kind of jobs are key for hiring from the 12 to 40? That's a big growth.
So sales was an aspect of that. And customer success was something we didn't have. We had our support team, but we didn't have more of a proactive support approach.
So customer success mean they're already customers.
Yeah. So, our support team is more reactive in the way you have a problem, you contact our support team, we'll help you out, we'll fix things like that. Now, from a customer success standpoint, we want to be reaching out to customers on certain different frequencies to learn a little bit more about their challenges, what they're trying to do, and work on strategy. So the more we can strategize with someone, the more use value they'll see out of the platform. The more value they see, the more likely they'll be here to stay, and they can also educate them on, so you're using automation, maybe you're using sales, but you're not using lead scoring or something like that. Let's try to get that set up, and we'll show you why the value is behind that. And people just get more and more into the product then. And that's something we just started like a number of months ago. And that's been, I think, a pretty important part of it. And then from the product standpoint, in development, you can't underestimate the value of that with such a product-focused company still on providing, something that is big UX focus, both on development and design. Those are two critical pieces that can be pretty challenging to hire for.
So, I mean, when you go from, you more than double, what are some of the things that, let's say someone is going, their team's going to be growing, their company's been growing, what are some things that people should watch out for when they have that big growth spurt?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we've had is just trying to hire fast enough. And it seems like it'd probably be an easy thing to solve, but it's not, because we went from this point of we didn't have any good hiring practices in place.
Right.
We went from 5 to 12 in the course of a really long time. We hired one person a year every 6 months.
Right.
So getting practices in place for hiring and then getting more people involved in the hiring process throughout the company.
What works with hiring? Do you do it yourself, or do you have another company?
So yeah, we do a blend. So we have a lot of people reach out to us directly. We reach out to certain people that we know of or that people know in the company. We utilize recruiters. We utilize different services that are essentially recruiter-like in a way.
Unless you have a lot of friends, like early on, you're just hiring your friends. And
you
reach a
limitation. Always be the best hire, but yeah.
What works best with that you found?
Yeah, so we found that organic approach, people that came to us, works really well. We found some wonderful people that way. It just doesn't scale very well. So we've been relying more and more as of late on recruiters and different services to try to find people. And that's allowed us to kind of pick up the pace and stay with it.
I mean, even people who I know who they've hired thousands of people, they still have a horror, there's not a great batting average there.
It's definitely a little bit of an art over a science in terms of, it's you're making judgments on a lot of things.
So now what is it going to take? So 40, and you're going to grow a lot from this point also. Yeah. So what are some of the big things that that you need to do?
Sure. So, and the biggest challenge right now is the number of bottlenecks within the company. And I'm probably by far the biggest bottleneck around stopping progression within the company. Not because I want to stop it.
Right.
With
give me an example of something that...
So there's certain things with support, with deliverability, with design decisions, with product development decisions, things like that.
You need to put your stamp before it goes forward, type of thing.
Yeah, or it's I have, I know of all the different moving pieces here, so I can easily answer something for someone within the company. Now, that doesn't scale very well because as much as I'd like to talk to everyone all the time, every day, I can't think about more product vision going forward then. So, getting key people in place for all the different kind of buckets within the company, that's been what we've been working towards. Yeah. And working on a little bit more of a, not structure in terms of hierarchy of Bob is better than, someone else or something, but having
people are overseeing certain things.
Yeah, and just having leads and things like that. So you can take one that allows a little bit more progression for people in different focuses. So that's been a big change as well. So back in the day, everyone was able to do a little bit of everything, whether it be support, development, features, bugs, everything. Where now, if we do that, it would be chaos is good, but that type of chaos is too far. So taking the chaos and kind of keeping it to a healthy amount of chaos.
So Jason, if you look on the past year, what are you proudest about that you removed yourself as the bottleneck of?
Good question. A number of the technical decisions, I guess, I'd say.
What did you do to remove? How did you remove yourself from that?
So someone has just been taking more leadership in that role. And then similarly with the support role, that's still kind of being worked on. I I'm not involved at the execution level of it as much.
Yeah.
So if there's an issue, which removes that bottleneck, and those are two critical components.
What was a technical one that you remember seeing that you probably previously would have had to oversee that you realized after the fact that it was already released? Can you think of one of those?
Where it went wrong, are you saying?
No, not when it went wrong,
Yeah.
but just that you realized that you didn't have to, you weren't the bottleneck, so you just realized it after the fact, that before you probably would have been hands deep in making that decision or shaping that decision, and then
so
you didn't have to.
Yeah, sure. So we've been working on this massive update to kind of how we have contact and deal management and whatnot. It's been a team effort that's been taking on months, and there's been countless decisions there, both from a product standpoint and from the technical standpoint. They've gone like if I was part of the process, I would have hampered everything in comparison to what they have put in place so far with what is going on. And quite honestly, like I can keep up with things, but they're doing far better job on decisions in that area.
Yeah.
Just of getting the frame in place and making sure that it's something solid we can build off of in the future.
I asked that because I know everyone wants to remove them. Most of the time, probably they're the bottleneck at some point.
Yeah.
And how do we remove ourselves as a bottleneck for all these things?
Yeah.
So you're saying what you did was you put someone in like a team in charge of it, and then someone in charge of that team that basically handled that.
And I think a lot of it is like, it's fine to be like to define the vision or direction of something. And say like, this is the goal, because you have to define something that coordinates with every other aspect of the company.
Right.
But then have people in place that you can trust to actually execute according to that.
Yeah.
And they'll deviate from your plan a bit, hopefully in good ways. And you have to let them do that, so they can take some ownership of it. But at more of an execution level, so that it's still within the direction that's defined, you can kind of have both parts. The value of defining that direction while not holding it up.
Yeah. So you set that vision and the value overall, and then there's someone in charge to execute on that, and the team basically follows.
In getting involved at times, but trying to stay out of the more minor details.
Right.
And trusting your team and trusting you actually made like hires and added people to the team that add a lot of value, and think about things that you find to be important. And part of that is just making sure that everyone understands what you find important, expressing that, and trying to get the entire team to kind of believe in the same thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, what you do, you have to wear a lot of hats. I mean, the bottom line is you're saying you're building an office. Like, you didn't sign up for this. You signed up for doing email marketing. Now you're building out offices and hiring, 40 people. Yeah. What's the toughest part of your job right now?
It's time. It's it's time and determining what should utilize my time, because there's limited time in the day, and that's been a challenge. But that goes back to trying to, work on getting that balance of people taking, certain things, ownership of certain areas.
Yeah. So, Jason, talk about some of the milestones of the past 5 years, like since you went the SaaS route.
Okay. It's, I'd say, kind of doing a little more of a micro level, even on the last 3 years ago. Yeah. We finally reached to a point where, we have a real SaaS business. Like, we can survive on SaaS. Like that was it took so long to get there, building up that compounding nature of, recurring revenue. It was a frustrating process. And I kept getting discouraged about how slow it was going. But then it was like a snowball. It just kept growing faster and faster and faster. And then, so like a year ago, we were feeling like we made great strides and everything. And then this year, in particular within the last 6 months, it's like, wow, like a year ago, that wasn't good at all. Like, that was okay, I guess, but that's like sad compared to now. In terms of where we're able to get our growth rates and where we're able to get our retention. We're really working on improving retention, and then also improving on expansion of accounts, and not necessarily in just a purely financial metric, but in what features are they using, and what sort of value can we then show to the business? Because then if we can just focus on that, everything else will fall into place financially.
Yeah. I'm always wondering, like a company, how do people have a dashboard on with goals? Like, does everyone know kind of what their goal
so
is?
I'm a big data person.
Right.
So yeah, we have we have TVs with like dashboards and things like that. I have some dashboards at my house just because I'm crazy.
Yeah.
too.
So what does it look like? Is it like like a thermometer? Like we want to get to this.
So you have some goals. So like some quarterly or annual goals, where we are currently in terms of subscriptions, and then key metrics like looking at net churn, logo churn, expansion revenue, sales metrics on how our sales team's doing. Same with CSMs and support. So, and the idea is to have different dashes for different people.
Right.
And then we send out updates to people, usually on a weekly basis, just to show them like, hey, this is kind of how you did last week in comparison to other weeks, and here's how the team's doing. Gives you insight into just how are things going for everyone?
Yeah.
How are people progressing? Because that's what we always look for, is we look for everyone to just progress over time. And we find that to be success here if you can just continually progress. And then every month I do a monthly recap, and I just talk about everything that's kind of gone on within the company in the last month, what unforeseen happen in the next month, where we are with all these key metrics, including financials and things like that, and just provide a ton of transparency.
So it seems like an open book.
Yeah, very much so. And then also it provides some accountability for myself. So I can let the whole team hold me accountable, because if I have a month where I'm like, okay, these metrics, wow, we won't talk about these metrics this month. I have now 40 people that can be like, hey, what's up? And so I can kind of explain things, and they can have a general sense. Because as you get more focused on something, you start to lose a little bit less knowledge of all the different areas. So I think it's important to have that general update for everyone.
So was that a conscious decision, or it just progressed because you had a small team and everyone kind of knew what was going on with everything? Like you hear of, what Buffer or whatever they have. Yeah. Basically, you could see even I think anyone can see their customers, their revenue, and everything like that, and they're open.
Yeah, so we're not that far open, I guess.
Right. I don't think most people are. But.
But it's an interesting concept, certainly. And I'd say, yeah, it's really just going down to like revenue. Everyone here can understand, what customers' revenues are, things like that. Mm-hmm. Health metrics on accounts, and then just the general, like more higher level financials and things like that, because that gives you an understanding of, hey, this is phenomenal. Like, how are we doing that at our given scale?
And you want to keep doing it. Yeah. So Jason, this has been awesome. So thank you so much. I always ask, since this is Inspired Insider, two things. One, what's been the lowest point in the business and how you push through?
Sure. 2008. 2008 was a fun time. I don't know. I can't say it was due to like the financial markets and things like that per se. It was just a challenging time. I got married, went on a honeymoon for 2 or 3 weeks. I come back and all hell has broken loose.
Really?
In terms of revenue, everything. Not because I was gone per se. It was just we had a couple product updates around that time right beforehand. We were still in that perpetual model. And it was just a very rough time as a company, where, it basically took everything in my power to just keep things moving along. And that was never really apparent to pretty much anyone here. But it took me to a place where I didn't want to go again. And that, in part, is what led to trying to refocus the company and to stabilize our revenue. And,
refocus, you mean cut down on the products, or? Cut
down on the products, so refocus on that, and then also figure out a better revenue model where, one, we can grow faster, and two, it can be more stable. And SaaS kind of fills both of those very nicely.
What was the most painful product-wise at that time when you did the product update?
It even more so than the actual update, it was the fact that we spent time and resources on something that people didn't care about. So instead of updating the email marketing like we should have been spending time on, we decided we're going to focus in more on our content management and more on our knowledge management. At the time, the market's shifting where you have all these other options going on there. It was a wise choice to focus on those. We devoted a lot of time. We only had 5 to 8 people, maybe 6, somewhere around there at the time. Having a couple people focus on the wrong product was a big error. So, it's,
So it's realizing what you're best at, but also what else is in the market of what you were doing that is going to capture the market that's maybe a waste of your time. Yeah. That's tough, especially after you get you're supposed to be relaxed after your honeymoon.
It was not a fun, and it took, I'd say it took 6 months at least to actually be somewhat more stable personally. And that takes a toll on you as a person, and it will affect the company because it's hard to completely stay away from things.
So how do you manage that then going home? How do you disconnect?
Well then, it wasn't. There's no magic.
Because you have dashboards at home too, so you can't get away from it.
Yes, yeah. Well, I didn't have one then.
Oh, okay.
But I'm also the type of person where I always know our metrics regardless of that because I have it on my phone and I probably look at that an unhealthy number of times a day. I probably don't up to the minute ARR and net churn and stuff.
You wake up at 2 a.m. I just got to check this now.
That's the first thing I look at. It's very unhealthy. I wouldn't suggest doing that.
For someone who's not balanced, which I would say most people who run businesses probably err on that not balanced side. What do you do now? Do you do anything to help you disconnect from that so you're not completely stressed or thinking about it?
My family helps me kind of force me to do that in a good way. So when I get home, I do try to disconnect. It might just be for an hour or two, but I try to actually just spend some time, without being on my phone. Then I'm getting better at it. It's not because I feel like I'm adding some tremendous value. It's just I am extremely passionate about it.
You're obsessed with your business. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You tinker with drones with your kids to take your mind off it or something.
Yeah. And that's been a great, thing for me because spending any time with them, it's just very simple. They put things in a nice perspective for me.
So on the flip side, Jason, what's been one of the proudest moments in the business?
It's really been this last 6 months or so. It's showing the type of growth rate that we're experiencing, improving upon that growth rate when people say that we're going to be decreasing, and then proving that wrong, and just building it up further. It's been exciting with all sorts of new things and tons of problems, but good problems to have, and we're going to have some less exciting challenges in the future, I'm sure. But right now, it's just been a really fun experience.
So what have you done to celebrate?
Nothing.
Nothing crazy?
Nothing overly.
You're getting a new office?
Yeah, we're getting a new office. So
what's exciting in the future that you're most excited about for ActiveCampaign?
It's the continuing shift. So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to make the sale and the reason to go to ActiveCampaign more about a contact experience and less about feature. And this is something that I think we'll see slowly progress over the year because we want to take kind of a soft approach to it as we have with everything so far, and really diving into being more about that contact experience. And that might mean additional features, expanding on things we already have, but making it less about we have email marketing with feature XXXX, and more about the value we provide. And I think why I find that exciting is, one, people will realize the value as part of the sales process. They'll see it as part of the success and support process, and that'll translate to all of our metrics.
Yeah. What about the proudest as far as customer success goes? What was one customer that has a particular huge amount of success using ActiveCampaign?
Yeah, so just like the other, I
know you have some case studies.
Yeah, we have some case studies, but honestly, the more valuable items I find are just people that email me, and it's a small shop, it's a small store or something like that, and they're like, I just wanted to say thank you for building this. Like, we just created a small, and it's not even like complex automations normally, just we created a simple, follow-up sequence on our customers, and we just saw our sales go up 40% or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's dollar-wise, it's not like huge, but it's huge to that business.
Right.
And how unique all these little, these nice small businesses are. I find that to be just fascinating, how much reach we have in regards to that.
Yeah. What's one of the most unique type of businesses that are on the platform that you were surprised?
It's literally all over the board. We've had some interesting organizations, I guess I'd say. We've had things that are like nonprofits. We've had like Earth Hour and whatnot do all their campaigns with us. We've had some political things which are interesting of its own category. I won't get into that, but yeah, it's just all over the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jason, I want to thank you. This has been fantastic. Everyone should check out ActiveCampaign.com. What should we leave people with after everything we've talked about?
Yeah, I think, just trying to look at your business and thinking about what could save you some time and what you're trying to accomplish and how you could utilize some form of automation to accomplish that, and really just reaching out to us, because that's a big task for a lot of people. The thinking of like how, or like what would I set up. So the tool is there, but how do you use it? And we recently released an update where we actually provide a bunch of sample recipes and workflows for common businesses on certain
That's
areas.
cool.
How you could automate customer success, how you could automate like more of a net promoter type of setup, how you can automate, just nurturing someone along the sales process. And then we're here to just just start that dialogue, and we can usually save you a ton of time in figuring out what it is. So you spend less time on the execution side.
Time is precious. Use automation.
Yeah.
Go back to, you have a million things to do. You have offices in place. Jason, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.